The following is a project of our nonprofit newsroom. Support Midcoast Morning and local community-centered journalism today by signing up to be a monthly sustaining donor at chly.ca/donate. It doesn't take much money to support local news.
Hello and welcome to Midcoast Morning. I'm Joe Pugh. Cities, towns, and community organizations across Vancouver Island are increasingly leaving behind X, the social media platform formerly known as Twitter. This week, Ladysmith joined Parksville as some of the latest communities to either shut down or publicly back away from use of the platform. Island Health has also stated that they are going to be de-emphasizing using X going forward. In February, Victoria City Council voted in favor of asking staff to report on the possibility of abandoning X. Ladysmith's communications and engagement specialist, Nicholas Pescod, says the town's decision to step away from the platform wasn't a political one. Why has the town of Ladysmith decided to discontinue using its account on X?
We found that it's a platform that's seen a lot of disengagement over the past, I'd say, year, even potentially even longer. We just felt that it didn't serve the function it once did, and that our efforts were better focused on platforms that were reaching our audience, which in this case, Facebook and Instagram are those two platforms, and we were getting a lot more reach and a lot more engagement that way.
The town mentions on a post on its website that it's not switching to using Blue Sky as of yet, which is a kind of an X alternative, sort of mimics some of the features people might be familiar with from the old Twitter. Can you tell me about where you are on that front?
Yeah, we don't see I don't want to say we don't see the value in Blue Sky just yet, but until we sort of see a mass migration of the broader public audience, and particularly some of the larger public officials, whether that be prime ministers, other major government agencies, political figures, until we sort of see that mass migration, we would rather focus our efforts on Facebook and Instagram. And the other thing I'll point out too is that currently a lot of the programs that we use to schedule social media posts, so Hootsuite, Sprout, if you're thinking about those things, they don't integrate with Blue Sky just yet. And so that is a part of the decision. Is it's a little harder for us it's a lot easier for us to manage our content if we could just schedule everything and have it go out without having to manually go to a different platform. And so that was partly a factor in it too. But if we see a greater migration in the next 6 months towards Blue Sky, it is something we're open to. We're not closing that door. We just haven't totally opened it yet.
Can you tell me a little bit more about the review process that led to this decision?
Yeah, sure. So I've been with the town now since May, and we did a social media strategy back in the fall, in which it sort of looked at our platforms, looked at the numbers and the engagement that we were getting. And we felt that just looking at the metrics, the way Twitter, or actually if you want to call it that, was performing, it really just wasn't doing what we'd hoped it was. We found that because of our small comm staff, that we could focus really heavily on Facebook and Instagram, doing memes, trying to be a little more creative, a little more fun. And that would be the better route for us to go versus spending time on X, which required us to have to modify our social copy just because we're at a character count on X. We don't have those parameters with Facebook and Instagram. There's a lot of overlap there. So we just felt with our short step, or I wouldn't say short step, but just with the time constraints and just everything else that we have to do here, that it was better to focus on two platforms. That one that performs very well, and that being Facebook, and two, Instagram, one that performed well, but we saw a lot of opportunity to really grow it and have fun with it. And so that's where we wanted to focus.
Were there any concerns of a sort of political nature around maybe what's going on in the United States right now and Elon Musk's ownership of the platform that played a role in your decision?
Yeah, that's a great question. For us, it really had nothing to do with politics. Of course, the timing of it coming out certainly helped. I think a lot more people were interested in or engage with it just because of the politics with everything that's going on in the world today. But that really wasn't a decision for us. This is something we've considered for quite some time. Even late last year, it was something we'd mulled and talked over. And even actually, if you go and look at it, we sort of quietly had just weaned ourselves off of it in the beginning of this year. And we just felt it was time to sort of tell the world, hey, like we're not using it. Come connect with us on Facebook and Instagram if you're a social media person, and if you're not, you can connect with us through our website. And that was sort of where we wanted to go with it. We just politics did not really play any sort of role into this decision.
A number of communities and organizations have been coming to similar decisions in the past weeks and months, notably Parksville, View Royal. Victoria's council passed a motion asking staff to look into the idea of abandoning X. Were there any discussions with other municipalities, or the comms departments at other municipalities, about this process, this decision?
Yeah, I've had some talks with some other colleagues, but I wouldn't say there's anything coordinated in that respect. It's each municipality's it's their own decision. We haven't coordinated anything. I didn't know about the Parksville decision until I saw it come out. So no, in that respect, there hasn't been any. I know there's naturally been chatter amongst all, whether it's municipalities or provincial governments or the federal governments. I'm sure there's been lots of discussions, just given the context of who owns X and potentially some of the security issues there and that sort of thing. So, but like I said, for us, it's been a decision that we've basically committed to and had thought about for a long time, and politics never really played a role in it.
Is there anything else you think it's important to bring to the conversation on this?
I just, I think people need to know that this is not a stand of political activism or anything like that. This is a conscious decision by the town of Ladysmith to basically channel the efforts and energy of the comms department into the two platforms that perform the best and reach the greatest audience. And that's the most important thing for our town, is that we want to get our message out there to the most amount of people in the best way possible. And we feel that these two platforms are the best way to do that. X has been declining for a considerable number of time, particularly since its ownership changed. And we just feel that our town will be better served by having two strong platforms at this point in time. So there was no politics really behind it.
Nicholas Pescott, thank you very much for taking the time.
Well, I appreciate it. It's a pleasure to talk. And if people are listening and they want to connect with us, our platform is just, our Instagram and our Facebook handles are Ladysmith BC. So you can do that. And for those that don't have social media, we have our www.ladysmith.ca website where we post lots of updates there as well.
Nicholas Pescott is Communications and Engagement Specialist with the town of Ladysmith. This week, the town announced it was discontinuing the use of its account on the social media platform X, formerly known as Twitter. I reached out to the city of Nanaimo to see if they were thinking about leaving X behind. I spoke with Dale Burgos, Manager of Corporate Communications and Community Relations. Recently, Ladysmith and Parksville have both said that they're stepping away from the social media platform X. Mm-hmm. Does Nanaimo have any plans to do the same?
In short, we are currently reviewing what it looks like for all of our social media channels. And just as a recap, we use X, formerly known as Twitter, and we also use Facebook, Instagram. We have LinkedIn. If you want to call YouTube a social media channel, we also use that as well. Now, really, the review process, there's a few things that we have to look at. So I understand, yes, I see Parksville, Port Alberni, for example, here on the island. Ladysmith, most recently, of course, they made the decision to stop using it. So what I want to precursor the conversation with is politics aside, right? And there's this sentiment out there that people just need to stop using the platform because of what it's attached to and who it's attached to, of course, right? Now, for us as a city, we I consider ourselves, the second largest on the island. And when I compare our municipality to what some other ones are doing right now, and I'm talking specifically like Comox, for example, on the island, or City of Vancouver, they are currently reviewing how or if they are going to continue using X. And that's where we're at right now. And the only reason why we do that, I like to think of it as three different things to look at. Okay, so the three pieces are, it is one way that local media like yourself may receive access pretty quickly to our news releases, which we've used in the past, or things like traffic updates, right? So we often use multiple platforms. So we'll use Facebook and X for those purposes. Another reason would be for record keeping purposes. So do we want to still keep this? Because again, we go back a year, and if I'm not mistaken, I've got some numbers around me here, but I think the engagement for Twitter over the last 12 months, I'm gonna go between X and Twitter just for the sake of this conversation. About 261,000 in terms of impressions. Now, again, I'm keeping all the politics aside. I'm looking at just as a social media tool and how we share the information from the city standpoint. So the impressions are quite a bit. Again, we go back a number of years, how long we've had this platform for. Number of posts over the years, so it's a historical piece, which is a big piece that I'd like to keep in mind. And then I'm just making some notes here. And also emergency situations. I left that for last because that seems to be the biggest one, and the reason why a lot of people are still using X. So, for example, the Ministry of Emergency Preparedness and Climate Change, they are climate readiness rather. They are using it to share emergencies. And I used the example of that 5.1 magnitude earthquake that we got late February, right? So we used X to post information about that. Okay. And then we received our information on that same platform from Emergency Management BC and other emergency platforms that are being used across the province. So that in itself is possibly one way to potentially keep or continue using X. Now, here's the thing. We are also seeing a decline in engagement. So I mentioned impressions, but when we look at engagement, we are seeing less and less in terms of who's connecting with us on X. So part of the review process is, well, we see that Facebook and Instagram are where we get our largest engagement, where we get the most views, the most clicks. Hands down, those we will continue on. X, or maybe an alternative that people are using now, Blue Sky. I'm not sure if you're on Blue Sky. I started just on a personal level playing around with it just to see what it looks like. I see that other media companies are starting to use Blue Sky, and that could be a natural progression. So what we've done as a city, we've already secured our username. We've already signed in, but we haven't made a decision yet if we're going to be moving over to Blue Sky. Just the other day, we activated Threads on Instagram. So there's another avenue that we can do that with. So what we have to do as an organization is we have to make sure that we can reach out to our community in a number of different ways. And I know people are stopping the use of Facebook. People maybe still are on Instagram, but people are getting rid of X. So what's an alternative that's similar to X is Blue Sky. And so that's a decision that we still have to make. Maybe I'll leave it at that if you have maybe some follow-up on that, Joe.
Yeah, you mentioned that the engagement has been declining over the course of the last year or so on X. Have you seen any other changes about maybe like what the way that engagement is, any of the vibes, so to speak?
Oh, I see where you're going. I'm going to say that the major difference is that there's maybe only certain few players or people in the community that are essentially still using it. I don't necessarily see, and again, this is just in generality and hearing from people, a lot of either negativity or, they're following certain people, they unfollow them, and yet they're still getting, notifications from those people. Again, those are just in generalities, just hearing from people. What we've seen is it's typically, a handful of people that still collaborate with us in terms of just X. Whereas, and again, a very much, I'll say, slight decline. I've only been with the city for just over a year. I'm not sure, and I can't compare to what what it was like before my time here at the city, but I do notice that it is considerably less than when I first started. And of course, with something like Facebook and Instagram, those numbers keep climbing. So there's it's not relative between all of those platforms. So there's definitely a change and a shift in people's use of X.
You mentioned a couple of times you used the phrase like politics aside. I'm just wondering, yes, is there a line or a point where maybe certain politics cross that line where you no longer say politics aside and say, like, for political reasons, we have decided to stop using this?
Right. So again, part of the whole process is, of course, that is a big part of it, right? We can easily say, and I can share that I've been having conversations with the chief administration officer who's been chatting with other CAOs across the province, and some of them outright said no. And I've seen, so for example, the community not far from Nanaimo, they were very clear, and the reason why they wanted to stop using that platform was it was very clear that it was for political reasons. Standing up for what we are as a country in terms of everything from tariffs to everything else. So yes, there's going to possibly be that time and place where we go, well, do we continue using this? And so what I like to say and how I like to approach this is, again, politics aside, what is this platform and how do we use it? And I'm not for or against it in any way. Personally, I don't use X anymore. I used it quite a bit in the past. And again, personal reasons. But for business purposes, with the amount of followers that we have, the potential that some of them may still only really be using that one platform and they are getting their information from us, whether it's, a handful or whether it's 1,000 or the 16,000 that I had seen that our numbers are at, there's potential there that people are still receiving that information. And so, doing our part as a communications department, but also as an organization, we have to make sure that we reach out in every possible way. Okay. Now, with that being said, if there's a point that we just stop using it, we have to have an alternative. And whether that alternative is Blue Sky, are enough people using it, then so be it. But again, that decision hasn't been made yet.
How much is this something that is up to you and your department internally on the city staff level versus, say, the potential for council to say, like, pass a motion, as has happened in Victoria last month? They passed a motion asking staff to look at, hey, could we get off this platform?
Yes. Okay. Well, of course, in that case, if a decision is made outside of the communications office, whether it is mayor and council or whether it is the CAO, then of course, I mean, in the end, that's the decision that's made, or at least that we review it a little bit more. What I'd like to do is, I spent some time over the past year figuring out what do we do, and those 3 points that I mentioned earlier in terms of emergency communications, connections to media, and then the records and the historical purposes. Those were the 3 main items that I focused on. Again, with everything aside, I wanted to see if we can approach it in this way. And but going back to your question, if it's decided that maybe we need to move on from this, then we move on from it. That's it's not a decision for me to make or to fight. If that's the case, then that is the case.
You mentioned that you're kind of reviewing all of this right now. Is that a definitive process with a concrete timeline? Like, could we expect that review to be concluded at some point?
Oh, definitely. Yes. It's not something that I'm taking lightly, because we have heard from people in the community very passionate about what's going on in the world, and how we are being treated as a country, and that doesn't go ignored. I mean, we are facing some unprecedented times. I'll say maybe not unprecedented, maybe that's not the right word, but in my time, in my history of my lifetime, definitely I've seen some things that I haven't experienced before. And all that is weighing on me as a manager for corporate communications, but it's also being chatted with, and I mentioned that I'm talking with the CAO. These conversations are happening now. In terms of just a timeline, I really believe that we can have some sort of information in the next little bit, and the idea is, do we continue with it, and if we do, how do we use it, and whether it's just very limited in terms of just when there's the emergency, and that's the reason why people are following us on X. Do we delete it completely? Well, if we delete it completely, does that mean we lose the rights to that username? So could someone else use the username? So there's a lot of things that we need to look into in terms of making that decision. So there's a couple of things that we have to figure out here.
When you say could be the next little bit, is that days? Is that weeks? A week? Months?
You know what? I could safely say, like, if this is airing in the next couple days, if we say middle of March, I'll present my position to the bosses. Not necessarily having to go to mayor and council. That could be very realistic. Yeah, I mean, we're very close. We're much closer now than we were 6 months ago.
You have mentioned that you've heard a lot from the public on this so far.
Yeah.
Is there room for more public input? If people have feelings about this, are they encouraged to reach out?
I mean, people, without any, requests, people have been reaching out, and they can always, send their thoughts and ideas. I'll tell you, for the most part, it's people saying, well, you know what, maybe get rid of it. It's not something that you need anymore. I don't use it anymore. Them saying that, of course. So why does the city need to do that? So it's great feedback. I welcome both for and against, and whether if it's something that someone wants to send and they have some thoughts, send it over to the email here is communications@nanaimo.ca. Easy enough. Send it over. Attention to my name, Dale, and share your thoughts. I'm okay with receiving that.
Could you give me maybe just a rough ballpark of how much you've heard from people on this? How many people?
It's not a lot. I mean, just in the last little bit, I can think of maybe 2. So, there's been, like I said, a handful. There's been verbal conversations. There's been people from, other municipalities. But in terms of people from our community, very little, most recently. Yeah.
Do you think there's anything else that is important to bring to a conversation on this today?
So I didn't want to make the decision like cut and dry. I didn't want to just say, whether it is political reasons or we just don't use it anymore. The fact is, it's still receiving engagement, right? So for me to get rid of something that still is being used, we have to take some time and make that decision, make it thoughtful, make sure that we're hearing from people, and then talk to other people within the organization. And just earlier today, I could share that I had a conversation with the communications team. All shared really good feedback. I received it well, and it's going to be part of just what I'm doing and what I'm having to do to make that decision. I know I say I, but it's not just a me decision. It's definitely me reporting then to your senior management and figuring out just our best way forward. Because if we say we're going to get rid of it, what's our solution? Or if we keep it, what's that solution, right? So there's a couple options that we're looking at here.
Dale Burgos, thank you very much for taking the time to speak with me about them.
No problem. Thanks, Joe. I appreciate you having me on.
Dale Burgos is manager of corporate communications and community relations with the city of Nanaimo.
Midcoast Morning is made possible by the Community Radio Fund of Canada and generous listeners like you. With your support, we can expand Midcoast Morning from 2 to 3 original programs per week to cover local news, current affairs, and arts and culture.
Ladysmith has a new mayor. Deena Beeston picked up 854 of 1,740 votes cast in a by-election last Saturday. It was to replace former Mayor Aaron Stone, who stepped away from the post last year to take a job as CEO of a South Island economic development organization. Tricia Mackay has been serving as acting mayor since then. She'll continue on in that role until Beeston is sworn in on March 18th. Voter turnout was just below 23% in the by-election. I spoke with Beeston about the campaign and what she hopes to accomplish in her new role. Can you walk me through what it was like for you on the day of this by-election?
Actually, it was kind of anticlimactic because I was actually homesick with the flu. So it really timing couldn't have been worse because I picked it up the beginning of the last week of the campaign. So it really curtailed my ability to get out and meet people. I spent a lot more time online on social media and communicating with people through email and by phone. Because of course you can't really go out and say, hey, vote for me. Here's the plague. So.
And yet you were still able to rack up almost half of the votes cast in the entire election. There were 5 candidates. Can you just walk me through what the campaign itself was like overall?
It was a really short campaign. We really only had a month. And then we, of course, got our February dump of snow in the middle of it. So that and in Ladysmith, a snowfall like that tends to shut things down. People don't go anywhere if they don't have to go anywhere. And it made it really challenging to, get out and try and knock on doors. It was one of those things. We had 2 all candidates meetings, which were good. They gave people the opportunity to come out and meet us and see us in person. And I did a lot of around town. I went to a lot of the bistros and the cafes and just published that I'd be here at this day from 2:00 to 4:00, and anybody that wanted to come in and meet me and ask me any questions, I'd be available. So that, I think, really worked well in my favor because people knew they could stop in, chat for a few minutes, and get a sense of who I was and why I was running.
Now that you've been elected, you're getting set to be sworn in on March 18th. What are you hoping to achieve? What are your priorities going forward for Ladysmith?
Well, I'm looking at going back. I want to go back to a time when municipal politics were much closer to home. They were more grassroots. I want to be available to people. I'll be having regular office hours that I'll be available. Anybody can stop down and see me, send me an email, get a hold of me through social media, and come in and talk to me about their suggestions, their ideas, their concerns. I'm looking at trying to make sure that we've got a lot more public involvement in things that, instead of something where we're just spending money on things, let's see if we can get task forces going. We have an amazing town and we have incredible people living here. I have met people that have so much knowledge and so much experience behind them, and they're here and they're willing. So we start tapping into that. I think we can start to see a lot more things getting done. And my big campaign was based on fiscal responsibility. Federal government offloads to provincial offloads to municipal, and the municipal have to go to the taxpayers. And the taxpayers are just done. We have a very uncertain 4 years coming towards us. None of us know what it's going to look like. I know everybody's kind of bracing for the worst case scenario, and hopefully it doesn't get that far. But if it does, we have to start living within our means, and we have to provide the services that people need and do it in the most fiscally responsible manner, to be taking less out of their pockets during a time when they don't have any more to give. So
last month on the program. Oh, hello.
Not even my cat. It's the neighbors.
That's fantastic. That feels very, Ladysmith somehow, if I'm allowed to say that.
Yeah.
Last month on the program, I was speaking with acting mayor Tricia Mackay, and she said what she pegs as maybe the most significant issue right now in local politics is just a lack of civility in discussions around things online. It was a subject of the show this week in Nanaimo, a sort of level of disruption that the council there has seen at meetings with members of the public, bringing in signs protesting to the extent that they've had to adjust some of the bylaws. What made you look around at the way things are in 2025 and say, you know what, I want to be a local politician?
Well, it kind of came down to my daughter saying, Mom, quit complaining, go do something. So I've seen where, like, our community was built by so many different people. And having grown up here and having seen how people who they didn't have anything in common, but when something was needed, they got together and they got it done. And they were able to put aside differences and work together for the greater good. And somehow we seem to have lost that ability. There just seems to be a lot more divisiveness out there and a lot less willingness to just put everything aside and work together. And that's what I'm hoping to try and get back to. I think everybody deserves to be heard. And I think that there's a perception, whether it's real or imagined, that people aren't being heard right now. And, you know, as I've said to a lot of people, I will absolutely listen. I may not agree and I may not be able to go the way you want me to, but I will absolutely listen to you and I will give you the respect that you deserve and give you my point of view. And hopefully we can get to that point where neither of us is really happy, but we've got a good compromise.
What did you make of the AAP last year looking for permission to borrow $13.5 million to build a new town hall, and maybe more broadly, just on the issue of building a new town hall?
Well, I think that there were definite reasons. I've spoken to so many people about this, and a lot of them weren't necessarily against the need for there being a new town hall, but they felt that they weren't being given actual, really, really clear answers on things. The AAP process was just to get permission for the council to explore building a new city hall and getting quotes and moving forward. They came out with the $13.5 million number, and they had an idea to partner with Catalyst to build some housing. But when people started asking questions, they were directed to links to go look up the information themselves. But when you would go there and look up the information, it was fairly vague. They didn't have exact numbers. You know, they came out with a $13.5 million. Well, you know, if you take a look around, the last 10 major projects that have been done by municipalities in BC in the last 8 years have all come in at over double what their initial cost was touted to be. So people were going, well, you know, are you telling us it's going to be 13 million, or are you saying, you know, oh, it could be 15 or 20 or 25, and how much is this really going to cost us? And, you know, the housing deal, you know, it was going to bring housing to the community, but it was also, at the end of the day, not giving us any, you know, fiscal benefit from that other than getting a 60-year-old building at the end of it. So I think people felt that their concerns were not being taken seriously, and that they weren't given any type of ability to meet at a town hall meeting and be given options like, here's option A, here's option B, and here's option C. And given the reasons for why they would like each option to move forward, it seemed to be almost an adversarial process. And of course, people got angry and made accusations. And then it seemed to turn into a little bit of a, you know, he said, she said, they said, we said, and people stopped talking and just started fighting. And it went downhill from there.
I believe over 2,100 people, around 2,100 people submitted forms in opposition in that AAP process. In this most recent by-election, only 1,700 people actually voted. The voter turnout was just under 23%. What do you make of that?
Well, again, being that I was involved in the campaign, and, you know, everybody peripheral to me was very knowledgeable and involved. You know, I actually saw a post online that one person posted and said, I didn't even know that there was an election. And it's kind of like, well, there were signs up all over town, and it was in the two local papers. There were candidates things. Pretty much all of the candidates were on social media and were on the local around town pages. So at that point in time, their thing was, why didn't we all get mailed a ballot so we could vote? And I kind of thought, well, if you can only go so far to get the information out there. I kind of go along with it was February. We had that huge dump of snow. We had lousy weather the rest of the month. People weren't out and about as much as they maybe would have been had the weather been better.
Now, it's a by-election. It's going to be a shortened term. Do you have any, maybe like one signature thing you're hoping by the time the next election rolls around, you'll be able to point to and say, this is something I achieved?
I've got a few ideas on things like that. One thing that was spoken of numerous times when I knocked on people's doors and met up with them was we have a fairly small recreation center in Ladysmith. And people have found that they would go to sign up for something and the classes are full. They're gone. And we're getting a lot of people from out of town coming in because it's a really quick, easy drive to get here. And they're available. So one thing that I'm going to do is set up a preliminary registration period for residents of Ladysmith and our close neighbors, and the CVRD, and give them time so that they can sign up before it's open to people that are out of the district. There's just one small thing that'll make people's lives a little bit easier.
Deena Beeston was elected mayor of Ladysmith in a by-election last Saturday. She'll be sworn in on March 18th. That's our show for the day. Thank you for joining me. I'm Joe Pugh, host and producer of Midcoast Morning. Jesse Woodward is our executive producer, and R.B. Frew is our technical advisor. Our theme song is First One by local Nanaimo band Waste Management. If you have a story you'd like us to cover, email us at news@chly.ca. That's all for now. I'll talk to you on another Midcoast Morning.
Midcoast Morning would not be possible without the funding of the Community Radio Fund of Canada's Radio Meters program and listeners like you. Midcoast Morning is a project of CHLY's nonprofit newsroom. This program acknowledges and gives thanks to the Nanaimo First Nation as we broadcast and podcast from their traditional territory. Thanks for listening.